It's insurance. So you want to keep your costs down as best you can. But I would argue, you have to look at insurance as it's a reflection on how effective you are as a leader in your organization.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome out to another episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we take a look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industries, and we take you to the front lines to those that are driving those changes. I'm Donnie, Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pest and Triangle Lawn, which, by the way, are my two favorite companies. And with me, fresh out of Pest World, COVID-free, from what I hear, Mr. Dan Gordon. Dan, would you like to say good afternoon? We were recording in afternoon, which is a little different for us. Introduce our sponsors.
Sure,
Talk a little bit about the peer groups and our good guest and just the aptly named topic of the day. So have at it.
Sure. So before I talk about the aptly named topic, let's thank our sponsors. Cold March by WorkWave. If you're interested in marketing services, by all means, visit them. They specialize in lawn and pest. And another sponsor is PestSure. If you're interested in industry-specific insurance for the pest management industry, that would be pestsure.com. And we have two special guests today, and the name of our podcast is Avoiding a Nuclear Verdict. I wonder how that got to be. And we are here with industry legend, and that's his title.
Yes.
Mike Rottler. And from PestSure, Todd Burke. And so today we're going to talk about the insurance market. We're going to talk about some, how captives work and whatnot. And with that, peer groups. If you're interested in, by the way, this is live and this is the way we roll. If you're interested in one of our industry-specific peer groups, by all means, visit us at PMP Industry Insider // peer groups. See, it's not written here, so I can't read it.
Can't read it.
Or go back to episode 136. Our good friend David Billingsley is our facilitator, and he's been quite successful with it. And so anyway, back to our story. Welcome, Todd. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Have you guys. Great to have you guys. Well, listen, it's great. Obviously we're talking a lot about, what's going on in the insurance market. And I will tell you, both you guys, Dan and I are members of several peer groups. And this is a very hot topic in the industry right now, with how difficult and how challenging the insurance market is. And so it's great that you guys are on the podcast here. And I think it's great that our listeners can kind of hear straight from you guys what you're seeing. And I don't know if I really caught it there, Dan, that you said that, but just for our listeners, Mike is the chairman of PestSure now. And so,
so let's explain how that all works. Mike is a PMP and has been for his whole career. And how did you get involved with this, and what is your role with PestSure and whatnot?
So years ago, we got involved with PestSure through a friend in the industry who had a company in Iowa, and he had started with PestSure and pretty much, realized fairly early in the game that it was a very comprehensive program that really the people who own and run the business are peers in the industry, and so they understand the types of coverages we need and what are important to businesses to keep you in business. And so consequently, he told me, he didn't even ask me, he just said, you need to do this. And I was like, oh, it's going to cost me more money. Why do I want to do that? And I go, it's insurance. Who cares? And he's just looked at me and he's like, I'm telling you to do it. I'm like, okay. So anyway, he pretty much, it was very clear that it was a good idea. And so I did it and we joined the program. And frankly, we haven't looked back. I mean, it's been a very, I think it's really helped our organization manage our growth and also manage our risk extremely well and it's helped us to become a better company. I don't want to get into all the details just yet, but at the end of the day, we are very loyal members, as are most companies that join this program. I mean, we have a very high retention rate, and a lot of these organizations, typically about the only time they leave is if they sell the business. But otherwise, they're in it for the long haul, and they realize quickly that they would much rather be have the support of this group. And so consequently, I started serving on the board in 2008. I finished up my term as NPMA president, and I was asked to serve on this board. And it's funny, I'd never even considered it, but when I was asked, I was like, yeah, I'd like to learn more about our industry. That's really why I got involved in NPMA, is I just wanted to understand the business that I was in. And then obviously this one, the board position came available, and I thought it's another opportunity to learn. So I joined in 2008, and I've been involved ever since. And I really feel like we do a good service for our shareholders and our insureds. I feel like
So what is your role, or what's your title now? What are you actually, an employee or a consultant, or what's your relationship with PestSure other than being an owner and using their insurance?
So as a board member, you don't get paid. They do take us nice places, but at the end of the day, it's a working group. So we go there, and yeah, we might be in a pretty place, but it's a little bit like any other industry related meeting. You're in a meeting, for at least a day or a day and a half, sometimes a little bit longer. But that said, it's a close knit group of industry CEOs that really are involved in helping this program work well for its insureds, because we're in the same group. So we're essentially involved in running the business, and we've got a great team at Alliant with Todd and his team. And my role as chairman changed in June. So Russ Ives was the chair I'm trying to remember, how many years has it been now, Todd?
It was 2000, I think I'm gonna guess almost correctly, 2012.
2000, so 12 years or Russ has served as the chairman, and he's just been an awesome leader to work with. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I kind of felt like, I'm very passionate about what this group does, and I felt like it was an opportunity to take over. I've been there. I'm the second longest tenured board member now. Time sure flies, but the board itself really, in some cases, these board members, pay a portion of their bill, the travel bill, just so they can, so we can make it all work. But at the end of the day, it's a really, it's a project we all believe in strongly and feel like it serves an important role for the industry.
Let's say I want to get a bunch of guys together and start an insurance company, which right? So how do you use, what is a captive? What does that look like? And why is that the vehicle that you've chosen? And either one of you can answer. And how does it work?
Well, I'll take that question from the PMP perspective, and then I'm going to let Todd, as the industry expert, really kind of weigh in as well. So that's pretty much how PestSure got started. So PestSure originally got created back in 1980, I believe, and it was a time in the industry where we were transitioning from old chemistry, products like chloridane and aldrin and dildrin that had a long life and a questionable one at times with the EPA. And then you also, I think, had a relatively hard market when it came to investments. And so consequently, insurers did not want to underwrite pest control companies. And so you had at the time, some rather substantial companies like J.C. Ehrlich and Eastern Western Pest Control and Waltham and a few others who actually Rose, a few others that couldn't or were having a very hard time buying insurance. Rates went through the roof. I mean, in some cases, they went up 3, 4, 5x from one year to the next. And so, obviously, if you're relatively new to the industry, you don't remember those times, but they were real and it happened. And I remember just working in my dad's company, which was tiny at the time. And I remember my folks having a hard time getting insurance and talking about it. And so it was a problem industry-wide. And essentially, the folks at PestSure decided, well, what would it take to self-insure? And so consequently, they started investigating the process. And the first chairman of PestSure, a gentleman by the name of Dick Keenan, really took the bull by the horns and then and brought along some folks with him and did a lot of work to find a way to self-insure, and it involved hiring attorneys and accounting firms in Bermuda, which actually at the time had some more favorable ways of running an insurance business. And as a result, and it's a slight difference. There's very little differences now over the years, but the organization is still domiciled in Bermuda, and there are two boards that the board members all serve on, and essentially, with the exception, I think one of our board members is only a CPS board member, but not a PestSure board member. But at the end of the day, it's a very well-run, long-running captive or insurance group, which is we only sell insurance to pest management firms, people in the industry. And so consequently, we really kind of focus on what we do best. And
But what's the difference between a captive and a more standard insurance company? Are there financial requirements and things like that? How does that work? And maybe Todd,
Yeah, I'll jump in. Thank you. So we get into the details of the various types of captives and all that. We're an association captive. We're homogeneous, as Mike said, captive that really people form captives back in 1980 because there was a problem and the insurance is a hard market cycle, which we're in a hard market cycle right now in the auto. We can talk more about that later. People, they're very, very popular mechanisms for just corporations, for groups. There's a lot of heterogeneous group captives out there. So, you'll have an HVAC person, a manufacturer, or whatever, all in one captive. We're fairly rare that we're as large as we are a homogeneous captive that's gone this 44 years. But really, the reason to form a captive is you gain control. You have more control over you have control with things we'll talk about today. Maybe we've got control over your claims handling. You have control over loss prevention. You have a lot more say, and controlling your cost of risk ultimately is the name of the game, and that's why we exist.
Well, I think one thing I have a question about, I mean, I'm assuming since this is all you do, it can allow you to be a lot more accurate in assessing risk, right? I think that's probably what started this, is some insurers were maybe overemphasizing or maybe overinflating what the real risk was to be in our industry, like what Mike was talking about earlier with some of the products that we had. So since you guys really understand it, you could probably be a lot more accurate, right, when it comes to assessing how much risk.
I mean, we proved the standard insurance market wrong. They were wrong about the pest control risk on the chemical, and that's been a good performing line, the general liability for us for many, many, many years, and still is today. From the beginnings being a general liability chemical type of risk, we've obviously now today we insure about 18,000 vehicles, and it's all about the auto risk today. I mean, yes, we pay termite claims, and we have some GL claims, but it has always been the most profitable line for us. But you're right about that. I mean, we see a lot of activity, as I alluded to, market cycles in the insurance industry. We're in a very difficult spot. We talked about it on the last podcast, and like you said, in peer groups and everywhere else, the buzz in the air, particularly in the pest world in Denver, however many conversations we had about people's concern with auto.
Right.
And we see a lot of submissions. We see a lot of companies across the United States, and we're very selective. But we are in an environment where we've never seen this much activity come our way.
So I want to come back to a point that we started with earlier, and then I want to get into a little bit about claims. But Mike, you mentioned something earlier when you were talking about when you got invited into the program, or maybe voluntold, I'm not sure. But ultimately, you were. I had that same, what mindset should a PMP have towards purchasing insurance? I don't know if you guys ever heard of Clark Howard or not, but I used to listen to him quite a bit. He's a radio host out of Atlanta, And one of the things he says is never go cheap on insurance. Like that's one thing that you don't try to whittle all the way down because it can bite you. But I'm curious to hear from your perspective, Mike, what mindset do you feel like a PMP should have towards purchasing insurance? And, should the bottom line dollar be the ultimate driver of that decision, whereas a traditional carrier may be able to offer different structures? Because if there's one thing I've learned about insurance is it's almost never apples to apples. You really got to work to try to get to a competing quote to be exactly in line because it's all in the terms. So what is your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think you teed it up really well, Donnie. I think in general, it is all about the terms. And in terms of, as a business owner, like I said, I told my buddy at the time, and I remember, I was like, it's insurance. So you want to keep your costs down as best you can. But I would argue that insurance, and the longer I've been in this business and realize that, and really for the most part, you have to look at insurance as it's a reflection on how effective you are as a leader in your organization. And it's really about, if you don't have claims, it's easy to get good rates. And if you have claims, then you need to work on preventing them, because that's the first place you can save money. Is you got to think long term, and you got to think about the impact that these claims have on your rates. And like I said, I think in general, a lot of us, we get hit with so many different things that cost us just a little more and just a little more here and a little more there. I always think of my health insurance. It's like, I'm so lucky I only get a 15% increase this year. Now,
that's all.
Yeah, but that said, I think when it comes to GL, work comp, auto, those claims, you have a better shot at controlling if you run your business well. And that was big reason why I felt like pretty early on PestSure was a good investment, because they have a full-time loss prevention expert who really does work it, and trying to get your team to understand that, it's about working smart. And we'll go through stages where we grow and we get lapse, or we get sloppy and we make mistakes, and then we settle back down and focus on what's important. And I think we all see that in our businesses as we grow our businesses. And that's, kind of something I've always focused on, is I want to grow the thing, but I think growing it smart and growing it the right way involves an understanding of risk management. And and that kind of appealed to me early on with the PestSure board, was I want to learn about, just different ways that I can impact my company and make it better. And one of our board members said one time, if you don't plan on performing better than the marketplace, then you really shouldn't be in a captive. You should just buy your insurance wherever you can. But if you plan on being a well or high performing organization, then you should do all you can to do, and you get the benefit of doing that if you're in a captive, because you do have folks that are looking, we really don't insure a ton of companies. We try to insure the best companies in the industry. And so consequently, it's, but I agree with the premise that as a business owner, you need to be smart about it. My brother is a surgeon, and years ago, he joined up with a group of plastic surgeons that were in a captive. And he's been in that program ever since. And he's seen some peers come and go because they had a hard time with their liability insurance. And so essentially, some of them literally had to fold up their practices and go to work in a hospital because they made a mistake on the insurance side.
So let's talk about the auto. I mean, the auto is that's what you were hearing all over Pest World is, and it's interesting because you guys know Mark Ruff. He's an attorney who works in the industry. And I remember going to at one of his seminars, and he had on a PowerPoint, what's the worst thing, what is your number one exposure? And everybody's raising their hand and saying termite liability. And then he put a picture of a smashed up truck and a really gross picture of a guy who was really hurt in an auto accident. And he said, that is it. And so, Todd, you seemed to talk about that before, but that seemed to be quite a bit of the conversation. And we're seeing it with our clients, double and triple of just a couple of years ago. What's going on with that, Mark?
Well, look, and I think we started the year, I think it was the podcast back in January, we started off talking about all this auto stuff. And I know it was a depressing way to start the year, and it's not any more fun to talk about now. But just some of the things we've learned this year. It's like, why why are these settlements getting larger? Why, we're seeing these fender bender accidents that should be off the books for fix the car, whatever, 25, 30, $40,000 and move on. That's why you have insurance, boom, check the box and go, well, what's happening is they're holding these claims longer. So let me give you an example. We had, I won't say any insured's names, but we had this was in Texas. It was a fender bender, and we hit this pickup truck, had a trailer hitched in it with no trailer, obviously. And they just hit it and they bent it, 5 or 6 mile an hour impact, fix the hitch, get everything done. It was $1,500 done. Claim closed. Well, what we don't know, and what's hard for insurance companies like us, is to talk about the development of claims. A lot of insureds don't understand the development of claims. It's like, hey, Todd, we got an increase in our auto, but we had a clean claim year last year. What's going on? Well, you got 4 or 5 open claims that we don't know how they're going to develop. This is the example I'm giving now. So this one was on the off the books just before the statute of limitations ran out. This couple was lawyered up, which over 75% of the folks that get in wrecks these days have an attorney. For sure, that number's gone up over a lot the last 4 or 5 years. And they came to us they each had gone to a doctor and had unnecessary surgeries, 3 of them each, 3 surgeries each, with a demand of $2 million. So it's a lottery ticket for these folks that are getting hit by pest control cup. I mean, any service vehicle that's involved in an accident, and they see a logo, they see deep pockets, and these plaintiff attorneys are holding these claims and running up the cost of these claims. So that's why it's so important. What can we do to help that? Well, I wish I had the magic answer there, but the quicker we can get these claims closed, and I'm not saying they can't reopen, like there's all kinds of things that can happen, but we can sign settlement documents and get out of these things. And we want to we want to be aggressive and get trial dates for the ones that are warranted. But it's the quicker we can get these things done, the better off. An old open claim is going to have a terrible outcome most of the time. So that's really what it is we've seen more people holding these open and dragging them out.
Yeah, I would also say that you're better off. I mean, it'll probably tee up one of our later questions, but you're better off avoiding them. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And part of our focus as a captive is to focus first and foremost on best practices. Now, mind you, we want to keep our rates in line, and that's part of what the program does as well. Is we really try to keep people's claims manageable. And Donnie, you were asking the benefits of it. I mean, I think part of it's control. And if you do a good job controlling things, then typically, at least in the past, you could count on, flat or close to flat renewals. And I mean, I remember earlier in the year, the Fed's actually lowered it once now, but one of the sticking points to lowering interest rates was auto insurance. It was like 2 issues. One was housing prices, and the second one was auto insurance, and that's for everybody. That's not just commercial. That's residential. So auto insurance rates have just skyrocketed across the country, and I think you could get into a million reasons as to why, but I think PestSure has focused and will continue to focus really hard on best practices and training and doing everything we can do to get our drivers safer than the rest of the industry or the rest of the marketplace.
So let's talk about that, because and for other listeners, if you're listening to this episode, just a reminder, we went through accident claims in episode 177 with Linda Mayette, and it was a fantastic episode. But let's just back up here for a second. I'm a PMP. I'm listening to this episode, um, I always try to focus on things I can control. I don't think that tort law is going to change anytime soon. And so this idea that these people who are going to play the lottery, they're going to go away. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But there are things I can control. If I'm listening to this episode and I've got a company, what do you feel like are the top 3 things that I can control to try to protect myself from one of these nuclear verdicts, right? From one of these $2 million. I mean, they're rolling into someone. I mean, this sounds like a freak out
Right. How
statement.
could you have that
Yeah.
example that
What's the
you gave?
control,
What
right?
could
What are
you
the
have
top 3
given?
things that you feel like, hey, obviously there's a whole litany of things that you could do. And I actually put this out to both of you guys. What do you feel like the top 3 things that if you focus in these areas, whether it's through data or experience or whatever, by far you're going to put yourself in a much better spot on an auto perspective than most of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I would just start off with distracted driving. I mean, distracted driving is probably the number one risk that we have on the auto side. And I think it's because, we've all got these devices in our hands, and it's so it's rampant in our society today. And we actually have people driving that don't even know what it's like to not have a cell phone. So we've got a generation of folks in many cases in our industry who grew up with a phone. They live on that phone, and they look at that phone. And and you see it all the time if you're on the road. I really feel for our drivers because they're out there trying to make a living, and driving anymore is dangerous at minimum. I mean, it's just they're in and out of neighborhoods. There's little kids playing. There's a million distractions. And so distracted driving, I think by far and away is the number one way to reduce your exposure. If you can get your technicians in the field to focus on driving and the professional drivers. And I love Linda. Linda's just a phenomenal resource for us to have as an industry, as well as for PestSure to have on our team, because she's so insightful and she's been doing this for a long time, and she really gets the exposures that we have. And when she sits in a room and tells you, you got to get your phone, put it away, you got to put it in a trunk, put it somewhere, but don't be looking at it when you're on the road. Like, she's not kidding. And and none of us love that idea because we all feel like we got to be in touch with the world. But I think the number one exposure we have is distracted driving. And then if you go from there, we've got a number of drivers that are inexperienced drivers. And I think that's an old one. It's funny. We all think that everybody gets their driver's license at 16, and they don't anymore. Some people wait, and they'll have periods of time where they don't even drive. And so consequently, I know it's a generational thing there again, but if they're not driving all the time, I mean, those are all skills that you develop and build over time. And anybody that's had a teenager knows good and well that there's different insurance rates for teenagers, especially teenage boys, than there are for most of us. That said, and then after that, I think those are probably the 2 biggies that we're focused on as a captive. And then I think it's, I would go back to good documentation when accidents do occur. Defensive driving courses, just investing in your people. Once again, I think I just go back to, it really is a measure. And I can tell you, as serving on board, I see rate differences between companies that are relatively the same size organization, operating in some cases very similar markets, and you'd see rate differences between these companies. And it's like, yeah, it's exposure driven. And maybe they had bad luck, to Todd's point earlier, with some of this, this crazy stuff that's going on the plaintiff's attorney side. But at the end of the day, I really believe that, it's just your rates are a reflection of how well your management team functions, and are you teaching and training your people to be effective.
So why would you mention something, maybe Todd, you mentioned about that these claims stay open longer? If I'm making a claim and you offer me something, I would think that, as time goes on, then it becomes less and less likely that I'm going to get more money. Why me as a plaintiff do I want to keep this thing open for longer? Why is it becoming more lucrative to do that?
Well, they tell them go get surgeries. They directing medical care. I mean, state of Florida, you never talk about tort reform. The state of Florida was successful in getting it passed where these plaintiff attorneys couldn't direct medical care anymore. And I'm not sure the exact date. It was like a year and a half ago. And the day before that law went into place, PestSure got 35 lawsuits. So from the state of Florida. I mean, there you go. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But the other states haven't done that yet. But
Your lawsuit in before the window closes.
that's what really it. They're running up the medical bills. They're making the case look way worse than it ever should have been, and that's what's happening. You know, and you know, if there's a death claim or something that's, you know, obviously the example I gave was very, you know, that's happened a lot. But if you have something really tragic happens and there's a death that's our fault, those typically close pretty quickly because you're gonna tender policy limits anyway. You just
Right.
minimize your legal expense by trying to fight it for whatever reason, and you know you're going to pay, and you're going to pay, and the umbrella carrier is going to pay, and you know so. But on these sleeper claims, as I'll call them, that you think are no big deal, they just blossom into these real issues for us. You know.
So Todd, for you, anything to add to what Mike was saying about distracted driving, you know, and then just good documentation as far as like, again, if I'm a listener and I've got a company, any other things that you can think of. And I mean, by the way, I think what he covered is absolutely, especially obviously auto is the pain point. You know, when you look at the pain point, certainly distracted driving is the number one thing there. Anything else you can think of that a PCO or, you know, PMP can actually control that would help them as far as reducing their exposure for these types of claims?
Well, you know, telematics is a big topic, and I think that, you know, we've seen it all, but I think that companies that put the cameras and put telematics, whether it's cameras or not cameras, but some sort of telematic product in their vehicles and manage it, are the ones in our program that have lower loss ratios. If you really do it, it works. If you just go and plug it in the vehicle and hope for the best, that's what you're going to get.
Right.
You know, as he said, you know, novice drivers, just to add to that, we define that as PestSure as a captive, someone with less than 5 years of driving experience. And we can draw, I mean, we did some studies with some clients that on some just randomly, and the large majority of the claims were from novice drivers. So hiring practices and stay away from novice drivers. I mean, I know it's hard to hire people, but
Very difficult.
it's a truth, you know. And so we don't exclude novice drivers, but we make you pay a little bit more for them.
Right. Anything else you guys that you want to talk about or add? I mean, obviously auto has been, you know, when we talk about nuclear claims, any other thoughts as far as ways to protect yourself? I mean, there's other pieces as well. Like you talked about it before, Todd, which is, you know, general liability, those types of things. Anything else you can think of is, I mean, the one thing I like about PestSure is you guys offer a ton. You have the conference and safety, and of course, you guys will come out and train folks. You come train your team. Maybe do you just want to kind of talk through that, because I do think that's unique, and I think it's a huge value add, and I think if you're a part of the program, you should absolutely take advantage of that. Can you just talk through that a little bit? Just kind of some of the benefits of that.
The loss prevention.
Yes.
So there's two. Let me. I've just had noted here. You know, just we're our own insurance company. The board has made great decisions along the way in making the right investments in that insurance company. One of them is, and we'll talk about it just briefly, is the claims function. You know, we have it 2 doors down from me as our director of claims. We have our own TPA, who is Sedgwick. So when you have claims, you're calling dedicated teams, liability team, a dedicated work comp team. So you're assigned adjusters. That's a big deal. This is the control thing, right? You don't get that if you're out in the standard insurance market. You're not going to have an assigned adjuster. You might have a company in Georgia and your adjusters in California. They don't know how to spell termite. You know, you get on the phone, it's a mess. So that's a huge benefit. No one wants to talk about the claims, but piece of it, but it's vital to us, and we spend a lot of money on it to get it right. Then loss prevention, of course, we've mentioned Linda McGett several times, and we invest heavily in that function too. And we just had our loss prevention meeting is every year. We had it in Scottsdale just about a month ago, and it was a day and a half. They work all year long putting a very, very tight agenda together. It's one of the conferences that people come back from that say, man, I'm glad I'm not going to miss that ever, because it's just good content. It's not a check the box type of you have to come and, some typical, speakers and agenda. It's very specific and on the topics at hand for the PMPs. And this year we spent a lot of time talking about distracted driving. We had a panel, we had attorneys there. We did mock depositions on like pretending someone's asking you about your driver safety policies and your company policies. It was eye-opening for folks. And, talked about rolling out these self-rezone initiatives that we're doing as a captive. A lot of discussion about that. So you take away things that can really help you and prevent these accidents. And like Mike said, that's the name of the game. Look, if we tell everybody not to use their cell phones, we got 18,000 vehicles. Our number one cause of loss is rear end collisions. We don't know. We're going to be able to measure this pretty well after the first year, but really after year two, I think we're hoping to see the numbers really drop significantly. What significantly is exactly, I don't know, but if we can drop 25, 30, 35% of our occurrences out, think about that for a second and what that could mean for rates and for our program and everything else. So we're, believe me, doing everything we can. When you come into the program, you've got at your fingertips immediately in the members only section of our website, you have access to. You have all that information, and we're here to help you however we can with whatever issues it might be. And not just auto, but crawl spaces and ladder safety. All those things are available to you.
Well, I truly mean this. We had a representative from Triangle at that conference, and they came back just ecstatic, and they really enjoyed the conference. And they have every time you guys have had one, and we've had someone there from Triangle. It's a fantastic conference, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, legitimately, each time we've attended those conferences, the person we had from Triangle came back, and we put in place a lot of the recommendations that they gathered at the conference. And so, if you're a member of PestSure, not attending the conference, that's just a plug for me that it's a very valuable conference, well worth the time. And you can't beat the cost, right? I mean, the cost is great if you're in the program. So,
right.
Mike, anything to add before we finish out here? I think this has been a fantastic episode.
I think I would just add, I mean, you guys mentioned that one of your sponsors is peer groups, and I think it's interesting. I mean, I look at PestSure as a big peer group. I mean, we're in this together. And we're basically in business together in the insurance business and protecting our organizations. And that's the way I like to think about it in terms of the insureds and the shareholders of this program. It's like, so, that's the other side of this program that, if you're going to be in this program, you're going to also own a share of it.
Right.
So and that's for a good reason. And some smart folks years ago figured out that if you have a financial interest in an organization, that might make you think twice about how you want to run things as well. And I think it resonates with our reinsurers as well. So at the end of the day, people don't always realize all the different layers and what all's going on in this complex business. And trust me, as a board member, it took me a while to wrap my head around all of it, but between, just how it all works and what has to go into it. And there are a lot of levers, financial levers, as to making sure this program is sustainable. But long term, it's about getting good companies involved, and whether they invest their time, whether they invest their money, whether they really see the value and the benefit. And I think it just goes back to something that some of our predecessors put together was a good business. And it's, to Todd touched on it earlier, there's not a lot of captives homogeneous captives that are still involved, but this program has sustained itself and done a great job over the years. So I look back on it, I think in my business personally, I think it's been very impactful, and that we've in the program and benefited greatly from it. But
Yeah, I mean, mind if I chime in for a second?
Yeah.
No, so I mean, right, it has morphed into a very valued industry resource. I mean, that's what this is. And we're not trying to be the standard market. There's a lot of people who listen to this, they're in the standard market, buying their insurance from somebody, new carriers switching every couple of years. And we don't want to be the standard market. We want to be a valued industry resource that gives you stability and predictability. Let you run your business, grow your business, forget about this insurance mess and let us worry about it. I mean, that's really what we're about is protecting your balance sheet and lowering your cost of risk over time. And once the light bulb goes off for folks that want a long-term partnership to accomplish those things, we've proven successful doing that. And we're gonna continue to do what we can to keep our auto rates and everything else where we are able to continue to be very competitive there, but not be the standard market.
Gotcha. I will tell you guys, I am, again, if you're listening to the podcast, I think most of our listeners know we use PestSure. We've been a very happy customer of PestSure. And just like Mike said, I'm a big believer in the program, and we're bought in and we're not going anywhere. And for me personally, when you ask me about my why do we use PestSure? It's really because I want an insurer who fully understands what we're doing. I don't want there being any weasel out clauses if I have something that happens that I didn't expect, or they don't really fully understand the industry, and then there's a claim, and then there's questions, and all of a sudden we're going down the path that I didn't anticipate. And so, I really appreciate what you guys are doing for the industry, and I think it's a big value add. And I feel like a lot of our listeners, whether you're in PestSure or not, should really take a good look at the program, because there's a lot more behind the hood than just risk management. There's also just a ton of tools and helps that it could be for the business. And so, Dan, anything to add before we finish out here?
Just Todd or Mike, if somebody wants to research the program and see if it's right for them, what do they need to do?
Just reach out to me. You got the requirement is you got to be 2 million or more in annual sales.
Okay.
And so just reach out to me. Are you going to post it, or do you want me to?
Yeah. What we'll do is, after each show, and I mean, this is probably the best time at any, but, just a reminder that all the resources that we talk about, we'll link up PestSure, we'll link up Todd's contact info. Just take a look under show notes for this episode. It's on pmpindustryinsider.com.
Yeah.
Mike, industry legend Rottler, we are grateful to have you here on the podcast yet again, talking about PestSure. Todd, also always appreciate your time. Appreciate you guys' support of the podcast. Also appreciate your support of the industry. Want to thank you for your time. And with that, I think we're all done. Dan, anything else before we finish out?
I think so. That's it.
Guys, thank you very much. We'll see you all next time. Take care now.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.